when I got told I needed the transplant assessment, originally it was going to be in March, which I've mentioned already, and then I said that I was meant to be skiing, and I was a ski guide for this event I really wanted to do, and was it okay? And again, in that moment, she said, yeah, we can put it in April. And I still doubt that to this day, whether, well, now no, it was the right decision. And I remember going to that trip, and I didn't tell anyone on the trip. There was a nurse and a doctor in my group, and I told one friend that this was going on in the background, and I had this assessment in April, but I felt okay, just so that he was aware if anything would happen to me. I still had the reveal device in, which was the heart monitor, and that hadn't showed anything. And so, I was there during that week, and it was one of the most unbelievable weeks of my life, to be honest, because it was just being so in the moment. And what I love about skiing is there's no technology. The only thing you've got to think about, you're at the top of the mountain, how to get down, where are the people, what's going on, what lift should I go on next? And when I was guiding as well, I had kind of around 20 people in my group. It was just the most amazing group of people, and it just was such a beautiful, blissful kind of distraction. And I remember getting a phone call, pre-call for the assessment, when I was on one of the chairlifts, and I answered the phone, and they go, oh yeah, calling from Papworth, calling for your 2-day pre-assessment review. And they go, oh, I've just read a note. Are you away at the moment? Because I said, oh, we were meant to call you next week, but I just thought I'd call you now. And I was like, yeah, actually, I'm skiing. And I feel also like probably they don't speak to a lot of people like me at my stage that are about to have a transplant assessment, but yet they're skiing. So there was a bit of a humour, I guess, around it, or just, a reflection. And I remember then they did call the following, kind of hung up and enjoyed the rest of the week. And the last run that we did in the slopes it was a beautiful sunny day, and I remember just tears in my eyes on the chairlift going up, sharing with a friend Lawrence who's Australian, and who, I think he was doing counselling for cancer patients, and I hadn't told him what was going on with me, and again, very different illness, but I shared, and we both had tears in our eyes, and it was a really overwhelming experience, thinking, the unexpected of what might happen in the next 10 days, and just being so grateful to have experienced that week with some amazing people, and also living in a bit of a bubble that no one knew, and I hadn't told anyone. I guess I was just living a bit make-believe, which also sometimes helps. And so again, I look back and I think, I said earlier, was that the right decision? 100% it was the right decision, because I felt like I could do it, and I could, and I was there, and so that was a really, really important, decisive moment. And it's, my doctors know this is also about me being a bit in control, and we're not really in control, but these bits going, I want to do this, so I'm going to push back an appointment, or I'm going to, that's a weird sense that gives me something back of me going, no, I'm choosing. I'm not going to let you choose how I live, what I do, when I'm going to do it. I'm going to be a bit, if I can, without risking it, be on my own terms. So I'm so grateful when I look back at that time and before that 2-day assessment. So I'm back in the UK, and the day has finally arrived. Again, it feels like that strange sense of this urgent and uncertain, and from January till April kind of feels like forever. And we talked about people and who you wanted to come with you to different appointments, and funnily enough, my sister-in-law, amazing, called Sharon, I say volunteered, I asked her, she drove me up to stay, and we went out for a nice dinner, and then she drove back, and I stayed in. It's good to stay in location, just if the appointment's early in the morning, then you don't need to worry about that, and it's kind of just being there. And funny enough, it's the first and last time I stayed in such a place. It was kind of one of the residency hospital things, which was, again, at the time, I just thought, it's better to stay on site by the hospital, so I don't need to worry about it, because it's 2 days. So you have the night before, and then the day of the tests, and then that night to be there, and then the following day to have the final tests. And that was a lovely dinner, and she was just really great, and just supportive. And looking back, was it a random choice? Perhaps. But it felt like the right thing. I knew nothing, there were no results. There was nothing going on. It was just to get there and to have a nice evening with someone that was fun and supportive and all of those things. So I was really appreciative for that. We go in the morning, they did a number of tests, and it's amazing, I guess, that it's like a machine, all the different people you saw, a load of blood tests, they did the x-rays again, they did a walking test, so to see how far you could walk and with kind of measuring everything. They did also a bite test as well, and so that was kind of, it was an intense day, it was tiring, and then my brother Michael, who I started the company with, who's a couple of years older than me, came and arrived in Cambridge, and we went, in Papworth, near Cambridge. We went out for dinner, and it was a bit of a sleepless night, to be honest. Again, we shared a room. This is I thought this was a good idea at the time, to be on site in hospital, to share a room, and, between us probably didn't get much sleep. They did also another right heart catheter, so they went into my neck and measured everything together. And then they sat me down at the end, and at the time I couldn't quite get my head around it, but Michael, then my brother, was with me during these meetings, and they talk you through the process of what happens when you need a transplant before they give you the prognosis. So before they tell you whether or not you need one, the main thing, because this was my first heart transplant assessment, was knowing whether or not I needed one. Was, can I have one? Because some people, there could be other complications, there could be other ailments. There's a whole host of things that they need to test to get you in to know also what blood type, various things, so that if you did have a transplant, if you needed one, could you have one? So that was A, and then secondly, do you need one now? So that was kind of the parameters of that. And I remember them sitting me down, and Michael was there, and Michael was great because he was writing everything down. I kind of just could be in the moment and be listening. And, they go through the process, and it's like, if you're on the list, you need to be within 4 hours of the hospital. Often you'll get called in the middle of the night. You'll then be blue lighted directly to the hospital, and within 4 hours of a heart being available, you will have could have had the operation. Once you've had the operation, you're on a lifetime of medication. You're not really meant to be in the sun much anymore, again, because you're more susceptible from skin cancer and just more sensitive. Another random thing, again, that stuck with me, you can't have Mr. Whippy ice cream. But I thought, if you can't have Mr. Whippy ice cream when you've had a transplant, surely we should not be eating Mr. Whippy ice cream anyway. I don't know what the frame of reference was for that. It's just one of those things that stayed with me. Ultimately, it's also the risks around it. And I think that the main, challenge is, one is accepting of the heart, so the body could reject. So there's a whole host of process with that. There's around a year recovery. I mean, you can get out of the hospital, amazingly, within a few weeks of having a transplant, but you need to go, and again, the regular checkups, and then the medication. The risks, and this is the stat that kind of makes me shudder, which is the average life expectancy after a transplant is 11 years. And that, again, it's based on averages, and the longest, I think it's now 33 years, is the longest someone's had a heart for, that's been a heart transplant. But then also, you can have a second transplant, but then also is that people who are already in their 60s or 70s, that, 11 years, they had it when they were 70 and they died when they were 81. Well, that's all right. But this framing, and it was one of those stats that really, I guess, shook me to the core. And anytime, you're thinking about this, it's like 11 years. It's just like 11 years. And how short that is. And making this decision, why would I make the decision if I'm feeling how I'm feeling today? And that's always the question about quality of life. Like, ultimately, will my quality of life be better if I have a transplant? Or will it be better to stay and delay that transplant potential as long as possible? So look, that was that meeting. And then I kind of questioned, why do they put you through all of that and to get all that information and like almost overwhelm for them to then have the next meeting when maybe you don't need a transplant? So why had they told you all of this? And my understanding of it now is ultimately it's a process. If you're already in the room, then it means that the chances of you having a transplant are very high, whether or not you need one today, if you need one in the future. And therefore, by giving you this information now, there is a lot to do with like accepting it and mentally processing it. And again, you're listening, I've heard all of that then now almost, 4.5 years ago or 4 years ago. I've heard it multiple times since, and each time you hear something different and you're adjusting, getting your head around what the actual process is. So I think there's a, very clear, because also if you then got told you need one, you're probably not going to listen to anything anyone says. So we had that, and then we went in to see the doctors. And the doctor said, the good news is if I needed one, I could have one. And based on everything, right now, you don't need one. And it's like that relief, and, again, it's like, is that the best? That's the best at this stage, really the best we could hope for, because we've got this far. They're not going to say, oh no, you don't need one, it's fine. So best of best, great, and we'll see you again in 6 months. And the doctors kind of operate that when I'm being seen in London, I'm seen every 6 months as well. So I'm seeing someone every 3 months, because then they're on a rotation. So, if that was, April, so May, June, July, I'll see my London doctor, and then July, August, September, I'll then see Papworth, and it will be kind of on this routine. And so there was relief, and at the same time, I guess, just this continuing uncertainty. Not now, 6 months. And how do you kind of live with that? Thanks for watching. To find out more about the charities that help support those with heart conditions, their families and loved ones, please have a look at the British Heart Foundation, Cardiomyopathy UK, and Save 9 Lives. Feel free to comment on the video and subscribe.